KFAR. It's where you can talk about the real issues facing you.
If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Samuel Adams.
The time is near at hand, which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. George Washington.
And what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Thomas Jefferson.
Posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that ever I took half the pains to preserve it. John Adams.
I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. Thomas Jefferson.
Government is instituted to protect property, this being the end of government. That alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exceptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens that free use of their own faculties. James Madison.
It would be an absurdity for jurors to be required to accept the judge's view of the law against their own opinion, judgment, and conscience. John Adams.
Whenever the legislators endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience, and are left to the common refuge which God hath provided for all men against force and violence. John Locke.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here, idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty, or give me death. Patrick Henry.
My people perish for the lack of knowledge. God.
And welcome to the Patriots Lament show. Appreciate having you on. We got a very, very special guest, a friend of the show, one of my favorite guests, and one of my favorite people to read, listen to, and talk to, Mr. Jeffrey Tucker. Are you there, Jeff?
I am here. It's really great to be here. I'm glad to be on your show again. It's always fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Exciting news. At least I got the email yesterday that LibertyMe is launched and on the road. Tell us about LibertyMe.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe it's actually happened. It was about 1 year ago I began to imagine that we could have a space in the digital cloud that combined a lot of different technologies for communications, from forums to book downloads and social networking tools, plus news, plus chat, just put everything into it so that we could have a nice community that would be centered on one idea of achieving more liberty. And I saw that all the technology was available, and I just kind of began to push and push and push, and here we are 1 year later, and the dream is realized. It's there, and it's amazing. I'm thrilled.
That's fantastic. And it's just, for folks that don't know, you can even just Google liberty.me, and boom, it'll come up in the Google search, hit it, and join it. It's going to be sweet. So is this going to be the Libertarian Facebook?
It has all Facebook functionality, but the important thing is that the users are 100% in control of it. You've noticed that over the last, the last year or last couple of years, Facebook is less and less under the control of the users. It's still a very useful technology. But you're not seeing your friends' updates. They're not seeing yours. The conversations you're having are getting increasingly sort of contentious, and they're not archived very well. You can't find anything. It's like all your engagement is more or less temporary. And so it's not a very good learning platform. It's a really good communication tool, but it's not a good tool for learning from each other too well. And also it doesn't offer anything else, like extended discussions or book downloads or news feeds or anything like that. So, LibertyMe goes a lot further than Facebook. We're combining many, many technologies into one portal. And it's true it's centered on, one interest, namely, human liberty. But as I was kind of doping out the whole system, I began to notice that there were more and more sort of niche social networks coming online for dog lovers or cancer sufferers or whatever it's going to be, and there wasn't anything for just people who believe in liberty. So that's what I put together, and we scaled it up really well by adding all sorts of new things in there. We opened with like 130 books or something that are available for download. Plus, you get discussions with the books. So as you're reading, you can discuss the book, and other people can benefit from you. What I really wanted to do was kind of create a crowdsourced knowledge platform. And a part of what I really, really liked, and it was the thing that really drove me forward, was the possibility of every single member of the site being able to create their own publishing sites and bypass the gatekeepers and just put their ideas out into the marketplace of ideas on their own volition, using their own creativity, without any gatekeeper. And that little dream has come true. And I'm just thrilled at the quality of the contributions. I spent my adult life as an editor, being the gatekeeper to articles. But now I'm starting to wonder if that was all just a gigantic mistake, because I'm not curating the articles that appear, and they're all just wonderful. I like to read every article that appears on LibertyMe as they appear, and they're coming up every couple hours. Kind of amazing.
That is awesome. Who are some of the other people that are with you in this thing and that people might know? I know that you got Robert Murphy in there.
Yeah, Bob Murphy's there. Robert Higgs, my good friend Shelby Richmond, Roderick Long was hanging out there earlier. Wendy McElroy, Kathy Reisenwitz. There's just a long list of luminaries that are really glad to be there, because it means their work gets attention that otherwise wouldn't have. The other thing that what's been very interesting to me is that the site culture is really friendly and civil, and that's hard to find these days. Actually, it's pretty fun. Once a person joins, the very first thing that happens is they get enabled into this kind of group chat. So we have this group chat. Of course, you can do individual chats too, but the group chat is kind of running 24/7. You can hop in there anytime and find friends and talk to them. And I do this every day. I say good night, to everybody. I say good morning to everybody. It's and everybody's really happy. Everybody's really friendly, and that's kind of hard to find in the Liberty space, because there's a lot to be unhappy about and a lot to be unfriendly about. But I really kind of wanted a place where we'd stop just complaining about all the problems and start thinking about solutions. So all of our forums are set up with an eye towards solutions. How do you get a second passport? How do you use Bitcoin? Are P2P lending sites good alternatives to banks? What are the pitfalls of homeschooling, and so on? So it really is about trying to figure out ways that we can, live, even if we don't have liberty from the government, we can sort of achieve more in our own lives.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's the number one thing that people ask us, really, is, okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, you don't want to have a state. Well, what do we do? And that's what you're bringing forward is something that has answers. And that's what we have needed for so long, is to have a forum where we can share ideas and answers, and ultimately it will refine the idea to perfection. Maybe not perfection, but it'll refine it down to a lot better.
Yeah, it's the way that people have achieved liberty in all of human history, as far as I can tell. It's never the case that the people in charge of the nation or society go, well, these people really need more liberty. What happens is people get together and they start building their own institutions that are separate from the state. and eventually those institutions get ever more robust. I mean, that's basically what happened in the colonial period, for example. The American colonists came and they developed churches and private associations and networks of trade and robust families and extended lineages. And it all existed outside the British Empire, and it was big, it was robust, it was the driving force in society. So then, when the king began to kind of ramp things up and start to tax and start to tighten down his monopolistic control of society, people are like, to heck with that. This is not the way we want to live. So I'm thinking that the same model actually might work in the digital age. Let's go ahead and found a city and build it out and live together and develop friendship networks that are stronger than any of our other civic associations. We could see magic happen under those conditions. That's my hope, anyway.
Wow. That's. I'm just sitting here thinking about what you just said about that. That's fantastic.
Well, and you can look at other revolutions in history too. I mean, I followed very carefully what happened to Russia in the 1980s before the whole Soviet empire collapsed. What happened is that Russians began to get ever more information about what was going on in the rest of the world. And they began to kind of demand in their own lives, better lives. So the underground economies grew, the gray markets grew more and more robust, people got more and more communication with people on the outside. Large networks of publishers and printers and religious institutions began to develop. People began to open up private restaurants in their homes. And after a while, the social institutions that lived outside the central plan were bigger than the plan itself. And then the pressure becomes very intense. At some point, despotism can't last when people have already figured out a way around it. They've learned how to kind of become independent-minded in their own lives, live with a dream of liberty, to become so suspicious of the central plan and the powers that be that they're trusting their friendship networks more. And at that point, the energy kind of drains away from the rulers, and that's basically what happened. There was a kind of an exhaustion. At some point you can't impose tyranny anymore because people just are really indifferent and not interested in cooperating anymore. And it doesn't happen like mass civil disobedience usually. It usually happens in a kind of a slow decay. So I'd like to kind of advance that model a little bit more through ever more crowdsourcing of ideas for new innovations and technologies that kind of free us up in our own lives. I really do believe that this is the path forward. Lord knows we've tried political activism, and that sort of thing for a very long time without a whole lot of progress. But we are seeing progress towards liberty through innovations and creativity and thinking together of new ways. I mean, there's so many examples around us. I love Bitcoin, but there are other examples. P2P lending is a great way around banks. We've seen Uber break up local taxi cab monopolies. Airbnb is a wonderful service that's very creative and allows peer-to-peer sharing of apartment rentals, making an end run around regulations and zoning controls and all these other things. So what I'm thinking is if we can ramp up these kind of strategies a lot and really sort of stick together and get smart, then we have a much greater success of achieving liberty in our lifetime than we otherwise would.
I think you bring up a good point on the political side. Outside of Ron Paul, it's been complete failure. And even Ron Paul politically did nothing. I mean, as far as achievement on the, what a politician would say he achieved, but his exposure, the way that he exposed liberty to the masses, I mean, that was his achievement, but that isn't really a political achievement in my mind. And that's just been a waste of time. I think that, right now it's so exciting to me anyways, that the discussion about actual freedom and actual liberty is like never before. People are actually reading books. They know who Mises is. They know who Rothbard is, and it's crazy. And this Liberty.me, I think this is the perfect time. I mean, 5 years ago, even if the technology was there, I don't think it would be as successful as it is now because people want the knowledge. That's, I think you're right. That's where we're going to see the change happening.
Yeah, that's right. And also a practical approach, which I really like. I like this idea of thinking of practical things that we can do in our own lives to make it freer. I mean, it's true, like, if you look at something like the homeschooling movement, I mean, it started in the 1970s, and here we are, 30 or 40 years later, and we can see how it's putting a lot of pressure on the public school system. And when you see the homeschoolers winning all the spelling bees, getting all the best spots in college, getting the best jobs, that sends a really interesting signal out to the culture and to society. I just think it's a lot more productive than running for the school board and trying to get your textbook implemented on, versus the other guy's textbook.
Absolutely.
The best thing is just pursue your life as you think it should be. It's not always easy because the government puts up a lot of barriers to us, but I like to think that every system has a flaw, and it's just a matter of being smart and clever and exploiting that flaw, finding that little wedge issue, and be getting really innovative, trying it out, and that's what puts pressure on the system, really. More so than lobbying, it's a matter of taking action in your own life. I really strongly believe this. These are hard-won views, by the way. I think, like everybody else, I began thinking about politics, about political issues, with an aspiration that I would, work for the right candidates and get the bad guys out. That didn't last very long, but I didn't really kind of come up with an alternative until I began to see in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, the way in which a liberty really lived in your life can actually vastly improve your life and work better for you and for the social order than any kind of state tools. And I began to experience this in several particular examples, like, publishing without copyright, innovating without patent, coming up with a new currency like cryptocurrency. You began to see how freedom and the idea of human liberty actually is more effective. It's not just an idea, it's a way to live. And if you embrace that, you'd be surprised at how much progress you can actually make.
It's also healthier for the people around you when you're not actively oppressing them.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and the outside of the political thing, you don't, there's no compromise. You don't have to compromise in this scenario.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing is that it kind of keeps your spirits lifted high. One of the worst things I've noticed over the years within the sort of liberty space of ideas is that people get just really down in the dumps because they know what's right, they know what's true, they know what's healthy for themselves and for others, and yet there doesn't seem to be any system in place to allow us to see our voices expressed and to see our dreams realized. So insofar as you're just kind of working for the next politician to get elected. And the problem with that whole system is that, first of all, you work for a candidate and he gets in office and he does something different from what you expected. The other problem is that politicians, and that means even some of the most powerful politicians, senators, presidents, it's unclear how much power they actually have to change the system. We might be sort of investing in the wrong system. Actually, it's the bureaucracies that are actually in charge of society, not so much the political figures. What politicians specialize in is getting elected and getting reelected, not in changing the system. So, and that's a very interesting thing to suddenly realize, actually, that the people who are ruling us, we are not really subject to elections. They're permanent bureaucrats. We don't know their names. They're mostly sort of burned out public servants who don't care that much, but they do have a job to do. And they will get demoralized if they feel like they're just living useless lives. And the way to make them feel that way is by doing cooler stuff, essentially, And
this is a worldwide thing, right? This isn't just LibertyMe is not just an American issue here, because you've already got people from around the world that have joined up with you, right?
Yeah, all over the world. And so the thing is that this whole model of Leviathan control of society It's not that old, really. You can find despotism in any age, but the idea that you should have a total state that runs every aspect of life, that is about 100 years old. And it was just a bad idea. It was a bad paradigm, and I think it's unsustainable paradigm. And especially in a digital age where we're able to communicate with anybody in the world, when we can download apps made by anywhere in the world from our smartphone, where we contain all human knowledge in our pockets,
And even cooler, we can stream live.
Yeah, we can stream live. We can do so much. I mean, every day I'm finding new cool technologies. And I wanted to, like just yesterday, I don't know how long it's been there, but I found that Facebook messaging allows video, or rather audio messaging. So you can actually, it bridges the difference between the telephone and text chat. So, and that's just an incredible innovation. I just saw that yesterday for the first time. So I get really excited about these sorts of things because they're bringing the world together in very interesting ways. I don't mean that we're all going to become one big collective. What I mean is that we're able to shape our lives better than we ever have been able to, thanks to technology. We're always sort of leaving feudalism more and more towards a situation where we actually have more choice about our associations, about how we want to live our lives. Technology is allowing that for us to do that. And the reason I started LibertyMe was that Liberty.me was that I wanted to kind of be part of this system. I wanted to be part of the solution rather than just one of those people that is constantly complaining. So yeah, we have people from all over the world. I just got back from a kind of a whirlwind global tour. I was in Australia and Brazil and Canada, and everywhere I went, it's always the same problems. They have entrenched bureaucrats that are running society. They have powerful corporate lobbyists that are kind of constantly seeking favors. Taxes are too high. Regulations are too high. There's too many trade protections and barriers. Whereas most people in the world are just longing for one thing, and that's just to have their property rights and human rights recognized and to enjoy their liberty.
Everybody wants to follow the American model.
Yeah, well, in a good sense and a bad sense, right? I mean, people are inspired very much by American history, but not so much inspired by our more recent experiments with Leviathan statism. So I see this as definitely a global movement, and it's very exciting to me for that reason. I don't think the Leviathan is sustainable. I really don't. I think it's an anachronism that is going to eventually be plowed under.
I got two questions for you if you got to. The first one is, do you think that the digital age, the age of communication that we're in now that you're talking about, is where you see the difference between Waco, Texas and the Bundy Ranch incident? The outcome of them.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea. I mean, even 10 years ago, we didn't have the communication tools that we have today. Now we really, really do. And what's important about the latest innovations in technology is that they can't be crushed because they live on distributed networks. Essentially, there's no way anymore for the censors to stop us from talking and from gaining information. That's huge. That's a gigantic difference. It means that there's something alive in the world that's much more powerful than any government or any combination of governments. That's kind of amazing. With the distributed network, I really do believe that sort of government has met its match.
Yeah, that's the point I was kind of driving at there. The other thing is you were mentioning Robert Higgs, and I've been trying to get that guy to come on the show. Will you go kick him for me in the shin really hard and tell him that he doesn't need to be intimidated or whatever it is. I don't think he's intimidated. It's not really the right word, but
yes, he
needs to come on the show. That's all I'm saying.
He does need to come on the show. I'll drop him a note and highly recommend you.
Tell him that guy, that Aaron Bennett guy that always bothers him on Facebook is not going to quit.
He's a great man who's the author of many great books and a wonderful person. I really appreciate all that he's done for the cause. I also like the fact that he joined up in LibertyMe pretty early on because he saw it as because he tends to be a little bit despairing actually in his outlook, and he's like he doesn't think the system can change. But I think he's been persuaded that even if that were true, the system can't be changed directly. He's realizing that we can change our lives and society through taking specific actions. I think he himself is planning to immigrate, actually, to Mexico, for example.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is a big step. And it's not one most of us are in a position to take, but it shows that he's thinking about solutions rather than just chronicling problems. Back in 1946, Ludwig Mises wrote a book reflecting on his life, and he said that he set out in the early part of his life to be a reformer, and he ended up being just a historian of decline. It's one of the saddest statements I've ever read. And but he's writing, right at the tail end of a horrible war. The whole world is being engulfed by the sort of flames and fires of statism and despotism, and he didn't see that much hope on the horizon. Our times are very different. We've got many reasons to be hopeful now, and I think we need to kind of jump on those and think about them and push them a little bit further.
Yeah, even the small. I guess they're not really small in terms of human life, but small battles that have been won in things like not bombing Syria. And Iran basically right now is off the table. And unfortunately, we have this situation in Ukraine, which is obviously the U.S. government's got their nose right in the middle of that. But there are little things like that, normally it was just war. All right, let's do it. To where now people are like, no. Maybe war is not the answer to everything that we have, every problem that we have.
Really true. It was all the way back, and it was about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, that we saw our last big efforts towards, sort of aggressive nationalistic war. And that was really before we all had smartphones. We were all carrying movie cameras in our pockets.
Yep.
I really wonder how 9/11 would have played itself out differently in these times versus those times. I'm a little reluctant to say that we've won against that tendency, but boy, that sure would be great to think that war is far less likely than it otherwise would be, thanks to technology.
Well, I think Syria is definitely a good example of that. Very well could be.
It very well could be. I have to think a little bit more about that. I'm really intrigued by it. Part of the problem is, as you look back at American history, it seems like, about every 5 to 8 years or something, there's another big war, and it's been pretty grim. So it's been a while. We still have these terrible wars going on, and we've got drones and stuff like that, but at least they're getting attention like they didn't in the past.
Yeah, they definitely are. It's even your local, even the guy that normally is USA all the way and wants to bomb and kill everyone is finally kind of waking up and going, man, every time those guys throw a drone strike, they kill a bunch of kids. And it's starting to bother people, which is amazing that it hasn't up till now, but at least now it is.
Because of the information age.
Yes. Yeah, most people have been mostly ignorant about everything. I remember in the 1980s when I first got interested in the subject of U.S. wars around the world, I was amazed at what I found. But you had to dig kind of deeply for it, and people were really unwilling to look at it and discuss it. I think you're right, it's not true anymore. We're surrounded by information now, and all we have to do is kind of, we can find out things right away.
Do you see a time when we will have a private internet?
Yes, I do. Many people working on that right now. There's the problem with the internet as it's currently constructed is that we have to rely on these internet service providers, and they can be well controlled by the state, as we saw in all the NSA scandals. So, but I go to a lot of conferences about technology, and it's a very, very high priority right now to create kind of peer-to-peer sharing of network power. So we don't have to rely on central third parties that have a point of failure or that can be controlled. This is a big deal right now, and we're seeing beautiful efforts towards that. I think it's probably going to be another couple of years before we really develop global peer-to-peer networks of internet sharing. But we're getting there, and the important thing is that people are aware of the problem and working on solutions.
Yeah.
Just a side note, not that it It doesn't add anything to bashing on the state, unfortunately. But a lot of that regulation isn't regulation at all. It's marketing. And we would do a lot better with an internet system that wasn't geared so much towards marketing. I mean, good examples, I have about 1,000 friends on Facebook, give or take. And I only see the updates from people that think like I do. And I know it's not because the rest of them aren't putting anything on Facebook. It's because Facebook has decided what I like for me. And that goes for, Josh might search something in Google, or you might, and I might. We'll probably all get the same thing, but I have to think of somebody else. Somebody down the road might search Google, and they're going to come up with different search results. It's, we're being labeled without even, and the state's not involved in that, but...
Yeah, this is fairly new. I mean, I was reflecting on that just this morning. I was thinking about, because I just finished a big article called Facebook is Dead, Long Live Facebook.
Yeah, I read that this morning.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this a lot. I'm not sure when the whole thing changed, or why, but it's definitely the case that the algorithms have tightened to the point that you just can't reach people like you used to be able to. And here's the thing about Facebook. I didn't go into this in my article, but the economic model of Facebook is that it's free for everybody, and you're basically a content provider to get eyeballs on the site, so that large corporate advertisers will be willing to pay for real estate, and then Facebook makes this money through click-throughs. That's their economic model. The problem with that is that the consumer doesn't really matter in this case. I mean, you're there not to be served, but to serve. So when I put together LibertyMe, I really wanted to dispense with this idea. I mean, we're already a very high traffic site, and we've only been open about 4 days, but we're going to be in position to sell very premium advertising space pretty soon. I don't want to do it. I'm not planning to do it because I really like this idea of a direct relationship between the producer and the consumer. I want to be responsible to our members, and it's true that it's about $14 a month. I think between with all the classes and the publishing spaces and the discussions and the forums and the friendship networks that are forming, I think it's going to be more than worth it. And I just part of me says, like, everybody said, oh, don't do that. Nobody's ever going to pay for that. But I kept thinking the whole time, if we create something that's like outrageously valuable, far more valuable in people's lives than Amazon Prime or Netflix or anything else, we can make this work. So that was my instinct. And so I even though people warned against it, I kept thinking that it would be possible. And I'm very pleased to say that we have more than 2,000 members already, and we've just opened. Nice.
Yeah, I actually read some of the warnings on different articles. You probably know what I'm talking about. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It didn't actually say you or anything in particular, but I thought, I know who he's talking about. That's interesting. But anyway, yeah. I think it's fantastic. I think what you're doing is awesome, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow. Because, I mean, people right now, they'll pay $15, $14, $20 a month to have their own website or whatever, and they could do that same thing with you, basically.
Yeah, and plus get classes and everything else.
Exactly.
So I watch my own spending habits, and it's interesting because I was at a restaurant, and I was talking to somebody of a high tech marketing guru, and we were sitting there having wine before dinner. They said, I don't recommend you do this. I don't think people are going to be willing to pay for it. And I said, let me ask you this. How much is this glass of wine? They said, I don't really know. And I said, well, here's another question. Who's going to pay for this glass of wine, actually? You or me? He said, gosh, I don't really know that either. I said, well, why are we doing this? We don't know how much it costs or who's going to pay. We're sitting here consuming it. He says, well, I guess because we're enjoying a glass of wine and enjoying each other. That's exactly it. Now, it turned out the wine was $14 a glass, and we split the tab, right? And I thought about it later. We weren't even thinking about the cost of that thing. We wanted to be together as friends, and that was more than worth it for us, even though there was uncertainty about how much we're paying or who's going to pay. And I thought, that's what that's what LibertyMe needs to do. It needs to take that sort of moment where you're having a glass of wine with your friend at a nice restaurant in Atlanta and expand it to the world and invite everybody in and say, hey, these are your friends. This is your setting. These are going to be the special moments in your life. And then just like dump massive, massive amounts of value on people. Not just a glass of wine, but endless discussions and chat and book downloads and classes for everybody, and really create a space where you feel that your life is being directly benefited in every single way. Then I thought I could make it work, and so far it seems to be working.
Tell us, just for people that, to intrigue them some more, tell us about these classes that you've brought up. What kind of classes are you talking about?
So one of the things they're live classes where anybody can online classes, of course, are a new thing. But I've conducted many of these classrooms over time, and I've been very frustrated by the technology. I teach a lot of these things, and every time you go in, you have to download some new plug-in. You have to put in a special passcode. I have a hard time figuring them out. I'm pretty good at them. I get really frustrated. I mean, these are all wonderful technologies in some way, but I never felt like they were really quite there yet. So when I put together the LibertyMe classroom, I really wanted a technology that would work just within the browser. It was just like one URL you would put in. You would immediately enter the classroom with nothing to download, nothing to do, and you could get a high-definition picture of the professor talking, who could play YouTubes or use a whiteboard or whatever. Well, I ended up having to go with a company that's not very well known because its technology is still very much in beta. It's an enterprise solution. And it was developed by some friends of mine who are in their early 20s who've been starving for the last 5 years trying to build this thing. And they built it out, and they're letting us be one of the early beta testers. And, we used it just an hour before this program began, and it was absolutely beautiful and elegant. And we were all able to ask questions and chat. And at some point I raised my hand and got on camera and asked a direct question to the professor. It was amazing. It was definitely the next generation where we're starting to work out the kinks.
That's fantastic.
And we're going to be running these classes. Right now, we've got them every few days. I'm teaching on, I think it's Monday night or maybe it's Tuesday night. I have to look at the schedule, but I have a series of 25 classes I'm giving on my favorite 25 books on human liberty, and each class introduces the book, discusses it, and talks about why it's important. So,
can you name?
The first one, the first one I'm doing is going to be on what's emerging as like my favorite liberty book ever written. Hardly anybody's ever heard of it. It's by Frank Chodoroff, and it's called The Rise and Fall of Society. And I just adore this book. So that's my very first class is going to be on this book because it's my number one favorite, actually. So I'm going to be just talking about the book and kind of marching through it, explaining why it's important, why it matters, where it came from, who Frank Chodoroff was, why he's an important figure, and what his unique insights are. So I get to do all this stuff. And then I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. The 25 books I picked, they're all, I did, it's easy enough to pick something like Human Action, 1,000 pages. I didn't do that. I picked books that people could read fairly quickly and wouldn't overburden them. I try to be realistic about people's time and their attention span. So I have this kind of collection, and it was fun to put together. And I'm really excited about talking about each one of these books in a separate session. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we usually suggest books that are more easy.
Yeah, it's one of the things I enjoyed from you when you were an editor over at Laissez-Faire Books was when you did a book review. I really enjoyed that because I actually got more out of, even if I'd read the book, when I read your review about it, I thought, sometimes I hadn't even thought of the perspective you put to it, or if I read the book afterwards, I had that perspective of yours in the back of my mind, which greatly made me appreciate the book even more. I really enjoy that.
I love that about working with Laissez-Faire more than anything else. That is a difficult job. but I loved the way my job there was basically to curate books, and I'm still the executive editor. I just finished something this last week. But I have to curate books and read them very carefully and write book summaries and write reviews and study tools. And I love the discipline of being required to do that. Like just this last week, my book that I picked was called Critique of Interventionism by Ludwig Mises written in 1929. Now, I would not have had really. There's always something to do other than read some, 85-year-old book on political economy, right? I mean, there's no reason to sit down and do that. But because of this job, it's something I have to do. And I always profit just so enormously. I mean, I dug through that book by Mises, and I was just walking around for days, thrilled about its contents, and it helped me see the world in a different way. It's real. It's like intellectual nourishment, to go back and read a book like that. So I really appreciate having that kind of opportunity and that discipline to do that because, we know how life works now. I mean, we don't tend to pick up these old books. What we tend to do is dig through our Twitter notifications and see our friends on Facebook and see what's new on Netflix. And next thing you know, the day's gone and the next one day folds into the next and it never stops.
Is there a trick to discipline? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just wondering, is there a trick to discipline yourself? Because it's important to read these books, I think. Is there a trick in disciplining yourself to make time to gain knowledge from reading these books?
Well, one thing I like to do, and this is especially hard, but I hesitate to bring it up, but I think it's a wonderful strategy. In fact, it's the single best learning tool there is. And if you have any children at any age in homeschool, I would recommend this strategy. And as I say, this is like boot camp. It's hard, but wow, the payoff is extraordinary. So what you do is this: you decide on one book, and rather than just sitting down and reading it and having the knowledge just sort of gush in and out of your head, what you do is you break it up into sections. I like to choose chapters. So say it's got 17 chapters. For each chapter, you read the one chapter, and then you put the book down, and you open up your computer, and you type up your thoughts on that chapter. It can be anywhere between 300 and 1,500 words. What you thought about it, what the chapter said, how you responded to it, how it made you think about things in a slightly different way, your reactions to it, questions you have. What I do is I call this live blogging a book. And it's like people live blog a concert, except you're actually recording your reactions to the book in real time as it happens. And then you do this for each chapter. And you set for yourself a goal of doing this every day. So let's say this takes 1 hour. Read one chapter, it takes you 25 minutes. And then you give yourself 35 minutes to type up between 300 and 1,500 words on what you just read. Then you close your computer and go on with your life. Well, in the course of 2 weeks, you've actually not just read a brilliant book, but you've mastered it. And you've got now suddenly like a monograph about the book itself. And then you go back and you read what you wrote, and it'll amaze you to observe how your mind has grown and observe all the things you learned. And you'll be impressed. You'll be like, my goodness, if I hadn't done this, I'd be a much stupider person than I am right now. That's a hard process, but what a discipline. I mean, it's so great. It makes you a much better thinker, a much better writer, and a much better person overall. I think it's the best single intellectual undertaking you can ever do, is to do exactly what I just said. And look, we're approaching the summer months, right?
Yep.
A lot of kids are going to be out of school. They're not going to be nothing's going on, If you're a parent and you've got a teenager, you might just sit them down and say, hey, listen, I've got a little summer task for us. And assign them a book. And maybe just pick out 3 books you want to do in the course of the summer. And just have them share their work with you on Google Docs. Read it as you go through it. it's an amazing thing for a child to get a chance to do that. And probably at the end of the summer, they'll come to you and say something like, you know what? I only worked an hour a day on this little task you gave me, but I feel like I learned more this summer than I learned the whole previous year. I promise you, that's what they'll say. It's a great, great way to spend the summer, and like massively and dramatically expanding a child's thinking capacity.
They're actually going to own that book and their thought process. Huh.
Yeah, and they'll have a nice record of their own learning process, and they'll get better at it. It's like I say, it's a little bit grueling, but if you allocate the time, like every day, just 1 hour before you go out and play, you've got to do your life blog for the day, 1 hour from beginning to end. And you do that as a way of earning your right to have fun. I mean, that's the way I like to think of it anyway. And next thing you know, I mean, after about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 days of this stuff, you start to look forward to it, and you get into the groove, and you feel your brain actually expanding. You feel your talents intensifying, and you feel like you're getting smarter. So I think it's a beautiful strategy. Every parent ought to use it, and the parent will benefit from it too, because of course you have to read the book alongside the child in order to be able to competently assess the child's work. So it's just wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with picking difficult texts too. Something like this Trotter book is a great one because children of all ages are actually much more capable than we think of them as being. I really strongly believe this. One of the reasons children don't like school is because it doesn't actually present that much of a challenge. There's so much busy work and not enough intellectual work. And that's especially true these days with all the educational reforms. I mean, you know what's going on, right, with this Common Core stuff and everything. I mean, we've got the government just trying to turn everybody into little soldiers, essentially, just robots who pass tests. That's not really learning. That's just that's a path to demoralization, I would say.
Well, in that line, I mean, isn't the state kind of nailing its own coffin when it does that? Because the state is, if it just keeps putting these drones out that can't think, eventually they're going to be the ones that are grown up and running things, and they're just going to be drones. To where the other side, like what you're doing with LibertyMe and other people are doing, and following what you just said with homeschooling, and I homeschool 8 of my wife does. What am I kidding? So our 8 children are homeschooled, and they're going to be thinking adults, critical thinkers.
Yeah,
won't they end up winning the day at the end eventually?
I think it's really true, and the point isn't really to win. The point is to thrive, regardless of the conditions.
What the conditions are, yeah.
Yeah, whatever the conditions are, and I think it's just obviously true that. I mean, I think this is especially true for children under the age of, say, 13 or 14, anywhere between the age of 5 and 13. There are a number of priorities that you have to undertake. One is to keep them out of the system. I think that's actually more important than what you positively do, but what you decline to do, which is to put them into this kind of. Now, not everybody has the freedom to do this. There are many reasons why people put their kids in public school. I'm not condemning anybody for their decisions here, but if you can possibly help that and keep them home and pay some attention to them, you will be amazed at the difference. The second thing I would really strongly recommend to any parents is that they figure out some way for the child to become valuable as a worker. Ever since the New Deal, you know what happened in the New Deal, right, with child labor laws?
Yes.
It wasn't about protecting children from exploitation. What happened was the unemployment rate was too high. So the government decided to just make a big rule that here's a whole swath of the population is not allowed to work. We can take them off the unemployment rolls and boost the employment rolls just through a a law.
A numbers game.
Yeah, it's just a numbers game. It wasn't about human rights. I mean, it's about violating human rights. So now you've got a situation where most kids, we've got a culture that believes that children are utterly useless, and worthless, and have nothing valuable to contribute to society. So we just lock them up in these cages. This is grim and horrible. If you can possibly figure out ways to give a child a real meaningful work to do, hopefully it's remunerative, but even if it's not, at least send the message that you are a person of value, you can work, you can contribute to the household in some fundamental way, or maybe to a commercial enterprise, and they learn things through these kinds of jobs. I think it's so cruel to keep a child out of the workplace until they're 17 or 18. By which point they don't want to get in, right?
Right.
Because they've got already they're on the golf team, the tennis team, the choir. They've got boyfriends and girlfriends, and they've already occupied their time with other things. So work sounds ridiculous. All they're thinking about doing is getting out of college, where they're going to be away from mom and dad, where they can spend your money and do bad things with their time. Until they're 22. This is not a good plan for life.
No, very much not. Well, I think even that, at least the college ideal, I've seen, at least people I interact with and stuff, that whole thing of, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you go to school, then you go to college. And that isn't necessarily the way to success anymore.
You're so right. Things are changing so fast on that front. I mean, like really fast. Like within the last 5 years, you're starting to see more and more people just look very skeptically at the whole institution of college, and going, why is it that we should spend $150,000 on this thing and take you out of the workforce for 4 years where you'd otherwise be learning stuff, and just putting you in a situation that's fraught with hazards? Why are we going to do this again? Yeah, we're starting to see people really rethink this, and I think it's really exciting. It's tremendous, actually.
It's a good thing for the people that love liberty, because the colleges now, I mean, you can't go, not everyone can go to a college where Walter Block's the professor. I mean, the fact of the matter is most of them are basically communists, and they're churning out good little communists on the other side.
Yeah, and or just drones or something.
Yeah.
And I think the habits that people pick up in college, once again, they come to believe that their task in life is really just to find things that occupy their time, not to do valuable things, but just to kind of burn through their time. They learn how to. They learn a lot of things you actually don't want them to learn, truth be told. And then it's a cruel system, because then they graduate, they imagine that they're suddenly suitable and ready for real life. They get out, and employers don't even have the slightest bit of interest in them, because they have nothing on their resumes to show that they're actually capable of showing up on time and doing good work. This is a very, very bad system we have. And the job marketplace these days is so highly competitive. I mean, you really, really need to get a good resume that shows that you know what it's like to accept the disciplines of a commercial marketplace of work, and have good references of people that can come to your future employers and say, this person is amazing. You really don't want to confront the job marketplace at the age of 22 or 23 without having good evidence that you are a high-quality, disciplined person capable of producing wonderful work, a real self-starter. You've got to have a resume that shows that. Are you just going to get eaten alive in this marketplace today?
That is a fact. It's really, it's sad. I just know so many people that wasted their lives or ruined their lives from it. It's just, I have one of my cousins, he's just now trying to decide what to do, and he's thinking college, and then they just recently told me, he's like, well, he's thinking about going to officer candidate school in the Marines. I'm like, you need to come back and stay with me for a little while.
Yeah, I know.
But they don't have any goal in life, though. I mean, they see things so dreary. It's like, well, these are my options: go to school, go to the military. That's it. That's the only thing they see in their life. It's sad.
Yeah, that's a very sad thing. And the military is not going to help. They think that it's the magic bullet. They think that maybe it's the thing that's going to make everything right. But boy, you go into the military, and look what they do. They pay for your school. Okay, well, maybe that's not the best thing for you, actually. You've got two strikes against you. You've been in the military doing God knows what, and not developing any real skills, and then you get stuffed into a school for an additional 2, 3, 4 years, where you're out of the job marketplace, and suddenly you find that you're nearly 30 years old and feeling despairing, like you haven't accomplished anything in life. I mean, on paper, it looks like you're amazing, but it just so happens that no employer has even the slightest interest in you.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Well, we got about a minute left, and I want to finish that off with you giving your information. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I assume if the NSA comes to Jeffrey Tucker and says, will you share your information with us, they'll probably be barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, you raise a very interesting point. This is, the NSA really has unbelievable power. At this point, if they came to me and told me to open up a portal to LibertyMe, I couldn't even tell you about it without breaking the federal law. I don't know if you know that. It's really pretty grim. So we are really right now at LibertyMe is just in its first iteration. What we're really working towards doing. We're
right at the end of the thing here. We got about 10 seconds. So, Jeffrey, thank you so much. Yeah. We'll try to have you on again if you're available. Liberty.me.
Yeah, love to see you.
Thank you.
KFAR Fairbanks, 660 AM. Online at KFAR 660.